whispers in the dark, waiting to be heard. Welcome to Silent Echoes, where we revisit mysteries that refuse to be silenced. Tonight, we open another file, another case left in the shadows. But beware, once you listen to the echoes of the past, you may never hear silence the same way again. Imagine living in a town where, for decades, a sadistic killer lurks among you. A man who blends in, going to work, attending church, leading a Boy Scout troop, all while harboring the darkest of secrets. For over 30 years, Wichita, Kansas was haunted by a ghost. He called himself BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill. And for years, he played a game with the police, a game with the media, a game with the entire city. But in the end, it was his own arrogance that would bring him down. It was a cold morning when 9-year-old Charlie Otero arrived home from school, expecting to see his family. Instead, he stepped into a nightmare. Inside the house, his parents and 2 of his siblings had been murdered in one of the most chilling crime scenes Wichita had ever seen. Joseph and Julie Otero had been strangled, their hands and feet bound with cord. Their children, 9-year-old Joseph Jr. and 11-year-old Josie, suffered the same horrific fate. The way the killer left his victims made it clear this was not a robbery gone wrong. This was something else entirely. For months, Wichita was on edge, no leads, no suspects. And then, the city received a message from the killer himself. For the first time, the monster hiding in the shadows spoke. The letter was addressed to a local newspaper. It was typewritten, filled with spelling errors, but chillingly detailed. He called himself BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill. And in those letters, he described exactly how he killed the Otero family, details only the murderer could know. Then came the most disturbing part. BTK didn't just confess, he boasted. He wanted attention. He wanted fear. He ended his letter with a warning. There will be more victims. 3 years passed. Maybe the killer had disappeared. Maybe he had moved away. But then in 1977, another letter arrived. This time, it wasn't just words. It came with a body. 24-year-old Shirley Vian was found strangled in her home, her hands and feet tied just like the Oteros. Later that year, another woman, Nancy Fox, was murdered in the same brutal fashion. BTK wasn't just killing, he was playing a game. He even called 911 himself, reporting his own crime. A calm voice came through the line. "You will find a homicide at 843 South Pershing." Then, he hung up. The police had nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA, no suspect. Just the voice of a man who was toying with them. For the next several years, the murders stopped. Had he moved on? Had he been arrested for something else? Or was he still out there, watching? The fear never truly left Wichita, but as time passed, people began to believe BTK was gone for good. They were wrong. It was 2004, 30 years after the Otero murders, when a chilling letter arrived at the Wichita Eagle newspaper. 3 words were typed on the envelope. Guess who? Inside was a disturbing message, along with crime scene photos from BTK's old murders, proof that the man the city had feared was back. And he was ready to play his twisted game again. He began sending packages, puzzles, and cryptic letters. Some were left in random locations, like under a stone in a park or inside a public library book. This was no longer about murder. It was about control. He wanted to be the mastermind, leading police on a chase with him pulling the strings. But this time, technology had caught up with him. BTK thought he was untouchable. He believed he was smarter than the police. But one mistake, one tiny slip, would be his downfall. In one of his letters, BTK asked the police a simple question. "Can you trace a floppy disk?" The police responded through a newspaper ad. "No, it is safe to use." It was a lie. Weeks later, Dennis Rader, still believing he was invincible, sent a purple floppy disk to a local TV station. What he didn't realize was that hidden in the metadata was a name. Dennis Rader, Christ Lutheran Church. A simple right-click exposed the man behind the mask. Police didn't rush in immediately. They needed proof. Investigators collected DNA from a medical sample belonging to Rader's daughter. When they compared it to evidence from the crime scenes, it was a perfect match. February 25th, 2005, police pulled over Dennis Rader in broad daylight. The man who had terrorized Wichita for decades was finally in handcuffs. And who was he? A husband, a father, a church president, a Boy Scout leader, a man no one ever suspected. When Dennis Rader sat in front of investigators, he didn't deny a thing. He didn't fight it. In fact, he bragged. He detailed every single murder, step by step, with no remorse. He even smiled. It was never about killing for him. It was about control. He wasn't just BTK. He was Dennis Rader, a nobody who wanted to be feared. Dennis Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms. He will die in prison. He wanted a legacy of terror. But in the end, he will be remembered for his own stupidity. He was caught because he couldn't resist the spotlight. And in his thirst for control, he lost everything. And so, the question remains, how many other monsters are hiding in plain sight?